Yeah, thank you. So I'm Vernon Stinebaker. I am a passionate volunteer at the Scrum Alliance. I'm also a full-time employee for a company called Proficient. I am the CEC, a CTC, member of both of the review teams, and also a member of the program improvement team, which focuses on improving our applications over time. So coaching is something I'm very passionate about, and I'm very happy to be able to share with you a bit about the Scrum Alliance coaching programs today. So I want to start with a little bit of a forward, and I want to really stress that becoming a certified Agile coach, a Scrum Alliance certified Agile coach, is really, really hard. These are guide level certifications that are truly the most rigorous, I'm certain, in the Agile space, and some of the most rigorous certifications in the industry. So,
all right, Vernon, I think you need to reshare the screen. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then while Vernon is sharing his screen, please remember that this session is being recorded. So if you would like not to be in the video, please turn off your videos or reading yourselves. That one. Okay.
So are we good again? I'm sorry, I can't see what's shared in this two-screen setup. So can we see my screen again?
You are good.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and so I was just saying that these are the most rigorous certifications, I think, in the Agile space and in the broader industry. So I think that that's a big gap for many people. I think many of our candidates come to us with unrealistic expectations about how qualified they think they are, and really misunderstand how difficult this journey is. And so what I want to do today is help you focus on a couple of things. One is the actual different pathways that you can take to become a certified Agile coach, and also what types of skills and experiences you need to be acquiring to be able to accomplish this certification. And so with that as background, we'll jump into the meat of the presentation. So there are basically two areas that we'll focus on. We'll focus on the various application paths to become a certified Agile coach. After that, we'll have some time for Q&A. Then we'll talk about the skills that you really need to be successful as both an Agile coach and also in order to successfully become a Scrum Alliance certified Agile coach. And then we'll have some time for the final Q&A. So we have a pretty short session today, and while I typically would encourage people to jump in at any time, I think we'll try to hold our questions to the Q&A sections, but I would encourage everyone to use the chat to enter questions that you might have as we go. And then when we break into the Q&A times, we'll try to respond to as many of those as we can. Any that we don't get to, I would encourage you to enter into either the CTC candidate group or the CEC candidate group on Google, and we'll do our best to respond to them there as well. So application paths. There's kind of a common flow regardless of the application path. And so I wanted to share that. And an important aspect to this is something that was introduced just, I guess, about a year ago, and that is a pre-application assessment call. And so actually, before you actually put too much effort into filling out an application, it's really valuable for you to schedule and go through an application call with one of the review team members, the CTC or the CEC review team, respectfully. And this isn't really like a screening call. You can decide to continue regardless of the outcome of that call. But the call really is intended to help you assess where you're at and give you specific feedback about any gaps that you have so that you can think about how you can move forward. And if you're in a position to move forward, you'll get that feedback as well. And so with that feedback in hand, you can then either decide that you want to continue to develop your skills, or you can decide, yeah, I'm ready to submit, in which case you'll complete an application. And want to highlight here that it's not at all uncommon. So said another way, it's quite common. The applications are deferred. And so it's always difficult for a candidate, for someone who's submitting an application to have their application deferred. But I would encourage you to take that with a coaching attitude, curiosity, and a mindset of this is a great opportunity to improve. So one tip here is that if you have a call with a CEC reviewer and they say, well, you might not be ready for CEC, but you might be ready for CTC, I would suggest you make another call with a CTC review member to let them assess as well, because we certainly want to try to use the pre-application call. It's one of those more personal connections that can be made during this application process. And we wouldn't want somebody to think, oh, the CEC said I'm ready, but then you get into the CTC application flow and discover that there are still some gaps. So a tip would be to follow up with a CTC reviewer just to make sure. And again, take the feedback that you get in that call as an opportunity to grow and develop. So after that, presuming you're not deferred, you'll go on to be certified. But really want to stress that the journey of a coach is a continuous, a lifelong journey. And so certification certainly isn't the end. You should continue to develop your skills over time. So in terms of application paths, the application path that's been around the longest is, we just refer to it as the standard application path. So this application path is predominantly document-based. That is, you fill out a pretty long form. Some of you may be somewhere in that journey. And ideally, this would be a form that you're filling out over time and probably filling out over and over again as your experience is growing and developing. And so you might end up writing each section more than one time as you grow and develop as a coach. So this application is split into two parts, and part one focuses predominantly on quantification, making sure that you have a meaningful reason for applying and strong personal development goals, appropriate experience, some evidence of ongoing learning related to the various facets that are required to be successful as a coach, and also community engagement and tools and techniques that are applied in various contexts over time. So you should submit the part one before you move on to part two. It, again, is not uncommon for the feedback in part one to also indicate that you might want to spend more time developing before you move on to part two. So part two focuses more on qualification or assessing that you have a coaching mindset and that you have experience applying appropriate tools and techniques in context with that coaching mindset. So mindset, systems thinking, reflection, including learning from failure. We anticipate that across all of the answers. So keep them in mind, not only when they might be very specifically requested, but just in general as you're responding. And so that's whenever we talk about the coaching mindset, one of the things that we would expect is that it's reflected, and those specific elements like systems thinking and reflection are really a part of every answer. Also, while we say that part one is focused more on quantification, we still expect that a coaching mindset is manifested in the responses there as well. And so one of the most common reasons that the part one might get feedback or even be deferred is lack of evidence of that coaching mindset. So actually, one of the enhancements we made to this application is part one is now the same form for both the CEC and the CTC. We're just looking at a little bit of a difference in terms of the specific quantification elements. So CECs have to have additional hours of experience. CECs are expected to have a broader set of both professional coaching development and also interrelated skills, multiple coaching models, for example. A deeper involvement in the community, a larger global presence, if you will, for the CECs. So one of the things that I think is really important for people is building an awareness, ideally even before they are submitting their application. And so attending events where there are other certified Agile coaches present and where you can introduce yourself is really valuable. I know that that can be challenging, but it's something that is worth the investment. And so one of the complaints that we often hear is that, it's document-based. It's not individuals and interactions enough. And so you do have some opportunities to address that, in fact, yourself. And one of those would be attending events, introducing yourself respectfully to other Agile coaches, Scrum Alliance certified Agile coaches, and ask them if they're willing to provide you with feedback as you move through that. And if they agree, ask them, would you rather do it kind of incrementally, or would you like to see it all at once? But I think a lot of candidates miss opportunities to create some interactivity themselves. So another way that you can engage reviewers a little bit more personally here is by responding to questions in the application when they're brought up. And so this is typically done through comments in either the online application system that's being rolled out or Google Documents, and create a little bit more of an interactive dialogue. If you don't understand what the coach is asking, you can ask back. And you can even suggest, hey, would it be useful for us to have a quick call about this? And so I think that especially at this level, whenever we're talking about guides, we're expecting people that can demonstrate some proactivity and creating some opportunities to communicate amongst themselves. So not being entirely passive. A couple of tips here. So one tip is carefully read and respond to the prompts. I think one of the most frustrating things we experience as reviewers are responses that fail either entirely or partially to just address the prompt. So make sure you're reading the prompt and addressing it fully. It's often convenient for us as reviewers to actually see that you've highlighted specific elements of the prompt in order to make it more effective. With regards to selecting this application path, one of the reasons that you might decide you want to use this path is because you may not have a mentor or someone who's willing to nominate you under the nomination path that we'll talk about next. And also, if you really want to use the application itself as a way to guide you in your development journey. So this is our most common path at this point, the original path. And so we'll come back to questions about that shortly. But before that, I want to move on to a second path. This is a bit newer path, and this is called the nomination path. And so a certified Agile coach can nominate others to become certified Agile coaches. CTCs can nominate other CTCs. CECs can nominate either CTCs or CECs. So this is a lighter weight application. Since the candidate is being nominated by an existing Scrum Alliance coach, we presume that the coach has validated their experience to a greater degree. And so same bar, but a different path. So it is expected that the coach has actually had an extensive opportunity to collaborate with the nominee in some capacity. And that they're able to actually validate that the candidate is demonstrating all of these competencies. There is an additional couple of pre-application calls with this path. One additional. And the one additional is actually with the coach who's doing the nominating. And so even before the nomination path with the candidate, the nominating coach should have a call with a member of the review team to make sure that the coach is familiar both with the application form and also the expectations that we have. And so after they've gone through that, they can assess, yes, my candidate is ready. They work with the candidate then collaboratively to complete this form. This form is now available through the online application system. And so this path is ideal for somebody that's already working with a certified Agile coach in some capacity, and presuming that that coach is willing to nominate and work with them. The nomination path is more lightweight, and you can typically probably complete it with the nominating coach in probably one longer session or a few shorter sessions, but it just takes a few hours to work through. So same expectations in terms of the bar, but a little bit more lightweight approach for people who have been working with certified Agile coaches. So one tip here that's often overlooked is in many places in the application form, we're asking for specific examples. And so we're not looking for testimonials from the coach like Vernon, shows this competency, but instead we're looking for a very specific example where the nominating coach has been able to observe this behavior in context, and they're able to present that in that work context. So this is a second path. I think it's a really great path, and if you have the opportunity to work with a coach to come through this path, especially if you're someone that doesn't enjoy writing, or if language like English is a second language for you and that might be a barrier, the nomination path is an interesting option for some. So there's a third path that's a beta path, and this is kind of a sub-path. This is the expedited path for someone who's already a CTC to become a CEC. So this is kind of a parallel reverse path, if you will. In the CEC application, you can actually respond to one additional question. And through responding to that additional question, you can become both a CTC and a CEC. And so this is kind of going the different direction, where if you're already a CTC, but you've developed the skills and experience required for the CEC, you can fill out a document-based but more lighter weight application. It basically pulls a few of the core parts of part 2, and you just have to complete that instead of having to complete the whole application. So across the application paths, regardless of the approach, the idea is that we have a same bar, but we've created some additional application paths in order to give people more opportunity to come into the Scrum Alliance coaching community. So, did you know that you actually don't have to hold a CSP to be eligible to apply? So this is only really applicable in the nomination path, but if you've been working with someone as a coach and you know they have all these competencies, but for some reason they haven't grown through the Scrum Alliance program, they never bothered to apply to become a CSP during the previous approach to becoming a CSP, and now they're maybe very advanced and might find it a bit remedial to go back through the ACSM, the CSPSM. You can still nominate them, and they will be vetted by an existing path to CSP educator. And if they're vetted at having CSP equivalent experience, then you can go ahead and nominate them as a CTC or a CEC. So this again gives us a little bit bigger tent in which we can welcome qualified coaches who may not have developed precisely through the current path, but really present the skills. And so this is another bit of a nuance to the nomination path that some individuals might find interesting. So that is a brief introduction to, the various nomination paths. And so I'd like to open it up for questions, and if our facilitators can maybe help, if you've identified some questions, share them with me and I'll try to respond.
Yeah, Vernon, we have one here from Renee or Rennie. For someone who has been Agile coaching for a long time, greater than 10 years, what is the value add proposition to get certified?
Sorry, what is the value of getting certified?
Value add proposition to get certified, yes.
Yeah. So to me, that's kind of a very personal question. I became certified because I worked with a lot of Agile coaches, Scrum Alliance certified Agile coaches that I really respected. and I wanted to have my skills validated by them, so I could feel like I was recognized by them as having that level of capability. There are some other benefits as well. For example, you can actually use coaching programs to coach people to CSM or CSPO or ACSXX or CSPXX. And so if you're really interested in developing others through that coaching path, that can, is another option. And that has actually, I think, much more direct financial benefits. I actually offer all of my ACSX and my CSPXX programs through coaching. I don't offer training at all because I think training is not an effective way to develop deep and advanced skills. So I think it's more of a personal question, and so I answered it personally. But what makes sense for you as an individual, I think you'll have to assess yourself, or maybe work with a coach to assess.
Awesome. We have a few more questions coming in. So from Sahendra, does Scrum Alliance have a mentorship program where we can connect with CTC and CEC mentors?
So kind of. So I wouldn't say that it's a Scrum Alliance program per se, just like trainers are not directly affiliated with the Scrum Alliance other than having this kind of certification relationship. The coaches are the same. And so there are a number of coaches that offer various types of mentoring programs that you can actually find reference to those programs, both from the Scrum Alliance web pages associated with coaching, as well as the Path to Coaching or the Path to Mentoring programs that I'll mention a little bit later as well. And so the answer is yes, there are coaches who offer those programs to help support people on their Scrum Alliance journey, but they're not really Scrum Alliance specific sponsored programs, and there aren't Scrum Alliance specific learning objectives that are related to those programs.
Okay. Then we have another one here from Z. What's the criteria for a CTC or CEC to nominate someone, having worked with at the same organization, or any specific criteria?
As I mentioned, there's one of the criteria is that they've worked with them enough that they're confident that the individual presents all of the capabilities and competencies necessary for the level for which they are being nominated. And of course, the criteria are the same criteria that we have across that application spectrum. So you can find out a little bit more about the specifics of the criteria, either by looking at the application itself or looking at also available a link from the Scrum Alliance website pages related to coaching. The summary of expectations is a kind of maybe a Google Doc kind of spreadsheet that compares the requirements for a CTC and the requirements for a CEC in a pretty abbreviated, abbreviated spreadsheet that shows the differences.
Okay, so I skipped one question from Samantha here for a while. So, okay, strange question. Lots of folks have approached me to mentor them. However, due to the fact that I don't have these credentials, I have said no, because that felt very unethical. I think that's the question, yeah.
Yeah, so the question is Vernon, I get this all the time, this question all the time. People want to be mentored by me. I will never get the credentials because I am a Scrum Master. I don't choose the Agile coach. But I've got so much experience that people are like, please run a mentor circle, do something. I have like 10 or 15 people that would sign up tomorrow. But it's like, hey, I got to pass you along. I don't have these creds and I never will.
So actually, whenever we're looking at mentorship within the application, we really don't, we look at the depth of the relationship and what the relationship focuses on, and the duration of the relationship. And ideally, everyone has multiple mentors, and they're mentoring multiple people. And so I certainly don't think it would be unethical to mentor someone, not at all, in a general sense. I do think that if you were saying, hey, I'm mentoring you to hold a credential that I don't have, I personally wouldn't be comfortable with that as well. But I think that the general context of mentoring someone to become a great Scrum Master, and I some time back wrote on Quora that to me, the use of the term Agile coach is really not very agile. I think all Scrum Masters are Agile coaches if they're great Scrum Masters. And so a lot of people want to create this hierarchy, which I think is pretty artificial.
But the application clearly states you can't count Scrum Master coaching hours.
So you cannot count those as part of your application, but actually the hours that you spent mentoring, if you're mentoring multiple people simultaneously, would probably be hours that you could count towards coaching.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Vernon, will you be able to take more questions at this point? I think 3 more.
So let's take one more, and we'll hold a couple more for the end.
Okay, so here's the question. Should we follow one CAC to go with a long way, or should we listen to many perspectives from many CAC?
So what are we trying to learn from the CAC is my kind of question to give me more context relative to responding.
Okay, should we invite Tue to clarify the question?
Yeah, so I want to go through the path to become the CTC, and I'm wondering if we listen to one CTC or we should listen to the probed ideas from many CTC to know, a lot of perspective. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a game sometimes that people play to talk about like team development, and the idea in the game, I can't remember, it's called the plane crashing in the desert kind of thing. I can't remember the name, but what we learned from that game is that the knowledge of groups often outweighs the knowledge of an individual. Although there is an exception to that, and that is when the individual is an expert in that particular area. And so if the person who's giving you advice is a member of the review team or a member of the program improvement team, almost all of who are also on one review team or the other, they will be able to give you better professional advice than a group of people would be able to provide you with. If you don't have access to an individual from the review team or the pit, then getting a broader set of perspectives could provide you with insight. I think in terms of general learning and a good coaching mindset, more is generally better. But again, expert advice is very valuable relative to specific questions. And so the same would be true about the CTC or the CEC application process.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to go on and talk about what I call development pipelines. And this is really advice that I offer to my mentees in terms of maximizing their ability to move forward in becoming certified as efficiently as possible. And so I really talk about 4 fundamental pipeline skills, and we'll build this out over a few slides. So the first is that we're expecting that a certified Agile coach has deep Scrum and Agile expertise in multiple areas. And so just knowing about Scrum is really not enough. We expect that they know things about other Agile approaches. And in general, over the next few topics, I'll say that generally we can say the more the merrier. The longer the experience, the deeper the experience, in all cases, the better. But at a minimum, you should be developing expertise across multiple disciplines that are related to Agile, in addition to deep Scrum expertise. And so, in fact, as we're reviewing the applications, we're looking to see whether or not the coach is aware of common dysfunctions. And oftentimes, the dysfunctions are just accepted without an apparent awareness or challenging of those assumptions. And so that really could demonstrate that the individual really doesn't even know Scrum that well. And so there is this expectation that that's going to be manifested, and we feel by and large as reviewers. Sorry, can you mute others and just leave me unmuted for now? Thank you. So yeah, we really are expecting that as experts in the area of Scrum, that their awareness should manifest itself without us having to review that as reviewers. And so developing this deep expertise, we expect that candidates are able to identify when Scrum might be appropriate and when something else might be more appropriate and why, as well as what are the complementary techniques that we can really integrate into Scrum to help our client achieve these results. And so as an empirical process, we're really expecting that candidates are describing hypotheses that they have identified with really conscious selection, and experiments that they're going to conduct in order to deepen their expertise within the context of their work. And so that's going to bring us quickly to the next thing in our pipeline. But these experiences are really what you should be using, drawing upon to respond to the applications. So our next area is expertise. And again, the broader experience you have, the better. And so especially for CTCs, we would expect that you've worked with a variety of team types and team sizes. For CECs, we'd expect that you've worked in a variety of industries, or if you're an internal coach, a large variety of internal business units that are of significant size. So like small companies in and of themselves. And so here, diversity is very important across all of these, across any application type. So the more variety in the teams, the organizations, the organizational functions like HR, talent development, or finance operations, and industries, the better. And so back to the point I was just making, right, that relative to your development, you are identifying specific hypotheses and experiments that are going to help validate or invalidate those hypotheses is important. And you should be courageous. Some of your experiments should be failing, and you should be demonstrating your ability to learn from those failures. And so whenever you're responding to the application prompts, while not every application prompt is asking for demonstration of learning from failure, some of them do specifically, it may be the best way to address even some other prompts where that's not explicitly asked. So demonstrating that you're learning from failure, that you're growing, that you have this mindset of curiosity and humility. These are really hallmarks of successful coaches. And so having these conscious experiments that you're conducting and learning from is really important content to apply back into the application. So Scrum and Agile experience. This is the second pipeline. So the third pipeline is professional coaching experience. And historically, this is the area where applications fail most often. And so we often find that individuals present a very coaching and directive mindset instead of a coaching mindset that approaches things from this perspective of curiosity and humility. And even in cases where someone might know this in principle, we often see that they're not able to apply it in practice or fluidly in practice. And those are certainly parts of the application evaluation as well. And so I want to stress here that while Agile coaching encompasses a variety of facets, right? It also includes consulting and training and mentoring and facilitating. And in fact, you should be developing skills across all of these. We've really had a recent focus in particular to address coaching because it was the most common point of failure. And so holding a professional coaching certification is not a requirement to become a certified Agile coach, but we have clearly identified that someone needs to bring that level of skill to their Agile coaching in order to qualify. And so for a CTC, they should be at a coaching level, a professional coaching level equivalent to an ICF ACC. And for a CEC, they should be at the PCC level. Additionally, for a CEC in particular, they should be familiar with multiple schools of coaching and ideally have practiced them to a point of fluency that they're able to synthesize them together, to integrate and be able to even perhaps have their own model that is the accumulation of that practice and synthesis. And so this is one of those areas also that distinguish between the CTC and the CEC. So relative to trying to help individuals develop these skills without having to go outside the Scrum Alliance, we do have a Path to Coaching program that is available through the Scrum Alliance labs right now. I think in hopefully not the too distant future, we'll see that promoted out of that kind of beta and into a more formal program. But I really think that it is the best collection of freely available coaching material that one can find. So I don't doubt that if you go out to YouTube and really look through a whole bunch of stuff and select one by one, you might be able to assemble something better. But in terms of it already being concentrated into one place, both in terms of depth and breadth, I don't think there is better material out there. And so I would encourage you, if you're not already engaged with that material, that you use it to develop your skills. So I often tell my own mentees, however, that I believe coaching is 20% knowledge and 80% practice. And so while I think the Path to Coaching program, the materials there are really invaluable, I would also encourage that you really need to practice. And ideally, you're getting some practice with feedback from someone who's qualified to provide feedback. And so on that same page and responding to an earlier question, there are Scrum Alliance certified coaches who offer various mentoring and coaching related programs to help individuals develop these skills. And again, just because I'm kind of highlighting coaching, you should really be developing expertise across all of these different facets that we are expecting out of a coach, the 5 that I just mentioned. So you should be developing deeper training skills. You should be developing deeper consulting skills, deeper mentoring skills, and especially deeper facilitation skills. And so while I highlight this here, because this is the biggest gap for most people, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't pay attention and that you shouldn't develop those skills in a way that you can also present them whenever you're completing the application. So this is a third pipeline. And the fourth pipeline that often ends up being the long pole in the tent for many individuals whenever they're applying to become a CAC is community engagement. And so the CTC, the CEC, and the CST are all guide level certifications. And what we're expecting from guides is that they're really demonstrating thought leadership in the global community. And so all of the applications require multiple years of engagement with the community. And whenever we talk about engagement, we don't mean attending events. So while attending an event like this is awesome and certainly is one aspect of community engagement, for you to really be qualified at the guide level, you need to be speaking at these events. You need to be a volunteer doing a host or a co-host or a chair. You may develop your own like Meetup or something like that, but we want to see that Meetup as something that is ongoing and growing and developing over time. Engaging in various Scrum Alliance committees as a volunteer or as perhaps a facilitator or host. And so again, across all of these dimensions, the longer the involvement, the greater variety of the involvement, the better. Sadly, I find, even amongst many of my own mentees, that the community involvement is something that they really don't engage in until maybe they've already become a CSP. And that pushes their application eligibility out substantially. So in summary around community engagement, I think a good target for any candidate is by the time you submit your application, your reputation has preceded you and you are already known to the reviewers. And so that's really what I encourage my mentees to target in terms of developing their profile around community engagement. And so these are 4 areas that I see are, well, I could say, the most critical. They're the areas where most applications might be challenged. And I draw them as pipelines because I want to talk about you can develop across all of these in parallel. In fact, my suggestion to individuals is if you're a CSM or CSPO, you know, those kind of become your on-road to these pipelines. But then you should be developing Scrum expertise in parallel. And the ACSM or the ACSPO programs, the CSM, the CSPO programs are really great programs that you can use to develop deeper Scrum and Agile expertise. And as you're going through those programs, and as I mentioned earlier, I have a strong bias for coaching, and so I actually deliver these programs as coaching programs. I'm not trying to market something here. I'm encouraging you to think about the way you want to develop yourself. And so engaging in these programs in a way that you're going to be able to develop your Scrum knowledge and expertise in the context of your work. So you're integrating learning and doing together is really powerful. And using that also as a foundation to create hypotheses that you can experiment and develop around so that you're building up this portfolio of diverse experience that you can use in response to the application. In parallel to that, using programs like the Path to Coaching, the Path to Coaching mentoring program, so that you're developing deep expertise in professional coaching. But again, I would encourage that you're also looking at developing your other expertise in parallel, that you're mentoring other people, that you're being mentored by others, that you're developing professional facilitation skills, that you're developing training delivery skills. And finally, that as early as possible that you get engaged in the community and that you continue developing that engagement until you truly have a global influence. And by building these 4 pipelines in parallel, you come out at the end very much ready to apply as either a CTC or a CEC, depending on where you're focused in the organization. And so these are the pipelines that I also wanted to share. And so with that in mind, we move to our final Q&A. And I think we might be a wee bit over time, but I hope we still have some time for some final questions.
Yeah, we have 2 minutes for some final Q&A. We have a question here from Sita. Any suggestion on how to start for CTC?
Yeah, see this slide.
Okay, is there anyone else with a few more questions related to the last bit? Let's see, questions coming in. So we can invite people to ask questions here. Okay, we have here one from Kishore. Is there a path to do CEC simultaneously with CTC? Or should we achieve CTC and then focus on CSC?
So these whether you become a CTC or a CEC, one can apply directly to become a CEC if they present those qualifications. And as I mentioned, in the standard path, you can actually address just, I believe, one additional question to apply for both the CEC and the CTC simultaneously. And so, yes, there is a path like that in the standard application path. But for many people, they may not have the experience that it requires to become a CEC. And so many of them will see the CTC as a step in that journey towards the CEC. And so that's why I represent those in this in this particular graphic as kind of this split pathway. You can certainly go to CEC directly, or you may use the CTC as a stepping stone to the CEC. You may also decide that you don't want to become a CEC, right? CTC is a perfectly viable kind of terminal certification for those individuals who are passionate about working with teams. And so while we actually will see some groups of individuals, or some individuals, I should say, that may span both of these areas, I think it's far more common for someone to focus on one area versus the other. And while I think right now we don't have a lot of appetite within the PIT or the Scrum Alliance to limit these so much, I could easily see in the future that to be able to maintain both certifications, that you'd actually have to demonstrate continuing hours at both levels. And I think that that would cause a lot of people who might have been grandfathered to have CTCs of not securing that certification going forward because they focus predominantly at the executive level. Or conversely, people who might become CECs but really don't work at that executive level that often to only retain the CTC. So that's something I could think could happen in the future, but is not really an issue at this point.
So thank you very much, Vernon. I think that is our time for the session. Really, really good information. Lots of things to reflect on the practice that we do.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I would again encourage everyone, if you're interested, to connect on the various Google groups, the CTC candidate or the CEC candidate, and I'd be happy to continue to responding to questions there. So thank you very much.